हरि जय गोपीचंद वल्लभा गिरिवरदा हरि यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपीचन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा जय प्रभुपादा श्रील प्रभुपादा जो वैष्णव मंच पर चतुर्थ सदस्य इस ऐसे भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन संस्थापकाचार्य श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जो वैष्णव परमहंस चतुर्थ सदस्य श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। जो वैष्णव श्रील किशोर दास महाराज की जय। जो वैष्णव सच्चिदानंद श्रील भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। जो वैष्णव सर्वभौम जी जगन्नाथ दास बाबू महाराज की जय। जय श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जी गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नमाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवशांति गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपिना श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। श्री श्री गौरांगी पैशन गौरीश्वर भगवान की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा में सुदर्शन भगवान की जय। श्री मायापुर धाम की जय। श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगमाई की जय। यमुनामाई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इस्कॉन वर्तमान गुरुवंत की जय। समाज भक्तवंत की जय। गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. नष्टप्रायेषु पत्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिः. Hare Krishna. Welcome you all to this Friday morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26 and Text 3. Anatiratma Purusho Nirgunaha Prakrite Paraha Pratyakdama Swayam Jyotir Vishwam Ena Samanvitam. अनादिरात्मा पुरुषो निर्गुणः प्रकृते परः प्रत्यग्धामा स्वयं ज्योतिर्विश्वं येन समन्वितम्. अनादिरात्मा पुरुषो निर्गुणः प्रकृते परः प्रत्यग्धामा स्वयं ज्योतिर्विश्वं येन समन्वितम्. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Soul and he has no beginning. He is transcendental to the material modes of nature and beyond the existence of this material world. He is perceivable everywhere because he is self-effulgent, and by self-effulgent luster, the entire creation is maintained. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described as being without beginning. He is Purusha, the Supreme Spirit. Purusha means person. When we think of a person in our present experience, that person has a beginning. This means that he has taken birth and there is a history from the beginning of his life. But the Lord is particularly mentioned here as Anadi, beginningless. If we examine all persons, we will find that everyone has a beginning. But when we approach a person who has no beginning, he is the Supreme Person. That is the definition given the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna, the Supreme Controller. He is without beginning and he is the beginning of everyone. This definition is found in all the Vedic literatures. The Lord is described as the soul or spirit. What is the definition of spirit? Spirit is perceivable everywhere. Brahman means great. His greatness is perceived everywhere. And what is that greatness? Consciousness. We have personal experience of consciousness, for it is spread all over the body. In every hair follicle of our body, we can feel consciousness. This is individual consciousness. Similarly, there is super consciousness. The example can be given of a small light and the sunlight. The sunlight is perceived everywhere, even within the room or in the sky. But the small light is experienced within a specific limit. Similarly, our consciousness is perceived within the limit of our particular body. But the super consciousness or the existence of God is perceived everywhere. He is present everywhere by his energy. It is stated in the Vishnu Purana that whatever we find anywhere and everywhere is the distribution of the energy of the Supreme God. In Bhagavad Gita also, it is confirmed that the Lord is all-pervading and exists everywhere by his two kinds of energy. One is spiritual and the other material. Both the spiritual and material energies are spread everywhere, and that is the proof of the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The existence of consciousness everywhere is not temporary. It is without beginning, and because it is without beginning, it is also without end. The theory that consciousness develops at a certain stage of material combination is not accepted herein, for the consciousness which exists everywhere is said to be without beginning. The materialistic or atheistic theory stating that there is no soul, that there is no God, and that the consciousness is the result of a combination of matter is not acceptable. Matter is not beginningless. It has a beginning. As this material body has a beginning, the universal body also And as our material body has begun on the basis of our soul, the entire gigantic universal body has begun on the basis of the Supreme Soul. The Vedanta Sutra says Janmandasya Yataya, Janmandasya. This entire material exhibition, its creation, its growth, its maintenance, and its dissolution is an emanation from the Supreme Person. In Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord says, I am the beginning, the source of birth of everything. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described here. He is not a temporary person, nor does he have a beginning. He is without a cause, and he is the cause of all causes. Paraha means transcendental, beyond the creative energy. The Lord is the creator of the entire, is the creator of the creative energy. We can see that there is a creative energy in the material world, but he is not under this energy. He is Prakriti Paraha, beyond this energy. He is not subjected to the threefold miseries created by the material energy because he is beyond it. The modes of material nature do not touch him. It is explained here, Swayam Jyotihi. He is light himself. We have experienced in the material world of one light being a reflection of another, just as moonlight is a reflection of the sunlight. Sunlight is also the reflection of the Brahma Jyoti. Similarly, Brahma Jyoti, the spiritual effulgence, is a reflection of the body of the Supreme Lord. This is confirmed the Brahma Samatya, Yasya Prabha Pavata. The Brahma Jyoti or Brahman effulgence is due to his bodily luster. Therefore, it is said here, Swayam Jyoti. He himself is light. His light is distributed in different ways as the Brahma Jyoti, as sunlight and as moonlight. Bhagavad Gita confirms that in the spiritual world, there is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity. The Upanishads also confirm this because the bodily luster of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is sufficient to illuminate the spiritual world. There is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or any other light or electricity. This self-illumination also contradicts the theory that the spirit soul or spiritual consciousness develops at a certain point in material combination. The term Swayam Jyoti indicates that there is no tinge of anything material or any material reaction. It is confirmed here that the concept of the Lord's all-pervasiveness is due to his illumination everywhere. We have experienced that the sun is situated in one place, but the sunlight is diffused all around for millions and millions of miles. That is our practical experience. Similarly, although the Supreme Light is situated in his personal abode, Vaikuntha or Vrindavana, his light is diffused not only in the spiritual world, but beyond that. In the material world also, that light is reflected by the sun globe, and the sunlight is reflected by the moon globe. Thus, although he is situated in his own abode, his light is distributed all over the spiritual and material worlds. The Brahma Samhita 537 confirms this. Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuta. He is living in Goloka, but still he is present all over the creation. He is the super soul of everything, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has innumerable transcendental qualities. It is also concluded that although he is undoubtedly a person, he is not a Purusha of this material world. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand that beyond this material world there can be a person. Therefore, they are impersonalists. But it is explained very nicely here that the personality of Godhead is beyond material existence. Om Agyanati Mirandas, Jnananjana Shalakaya, Chakshut Militamena Tasmai, Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Ena Bhutale, Swayam Rupagadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam, Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Patakamalam, Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha, Shri Rupam Sankajatam, Sagana Raghunathanvitam, Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam, Savadutam Parijanasahitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padan, Sagana Shri Vishakanvitamscha, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite, Taptakan Chanakaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Vishabhanusite Devi Pranamami Hari Priye, Panchakalpatarupyasya Kapasnudupya Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Muham Karo Devachalam Bandam Lage Degin, Tatkapan Muhammad Deshe Gurum Dhanatarna Paramanda Madam Shri Chaitanya Vishwa. Hare Krishna. So in this verse, Lord Kapila explains about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to his mother Devahuti. So there are about 7 qualities that are mentioned here. One is Anadihi, that is without a beginning. He is Atma, the Supreme Soul. He is also a Purusha, he is a personality of Godhead. He is Guru Nirgunaha, he is transcendent to the material modes of nature. Then Pratyak Dhyama is perceivable everywhere. Then Swayam Jyoti is self-effulgent. And Vishwam Ena Samanvitam, that means entire creation is maintained by him. So we'll go through each of these qualities one by one. He is transcendental. The Lord is transcendental. That means we, the conditioned souls, are bound by this material nature composed of 3 modes of material nature, that is goodness, passion, and ignorance. But the Supreme Lord is transcendent to the 3 modes of material nature, and he is beyond the existence of this material world. He is transcendental, he is spirit, and he is not conditioned by the modes like us. So he's there is a very nice quote in which in Paramatma just prays the 7th canto. He prays to Lord Narasimha, "Oh my dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the Supreme Soul. If one meditates upon your transcendental body, you naturally protect him from all sorts of fear, even the imminent danger of death." That means if one is able to just even meditate on the transcendental nature of the Lord's body, that is enough for one to be protected from all sorts of fear, including the danger of death. Similarly, the Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Charme Divyam. If someone knows the transcendental nature of the Lord's appearance and also his activities and his pastime, he can be liberated from this cycle of this birth and death from this material world. In fact, the Lord himself, when Brahma prays for his for creative energy, the Lord himself replies that although I am not easily knowable by a conditioned soul, you have known me today because you know that my personality is not constituted of anything material, or specifically not of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. So our body is built up of 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. That is earth, water, fire, air, ether, and then the 3 subtle ones are mind, intelligence, and possible. So the Lord is not made of these 5 gross and 3 subtle elements. So the Lord is replying to Brahma that Brahma knew that he is not constituted, the Lord is not constituted of these 8 elements. That is why the Lord revealed himself. Then the next quality that is mentioned is about changeless. Our body changes. We take birth, it grows, and then we become mature, and then at some time we become old, and then finally we die. So our body changes, whereas the Lord's body does not change at all. It is changeless. The reason he doesn't change is he has no beginning also. Even though Krishna appears in this material world, the Lord does not change his position because he is spiritual in nature. His body is not composed of these material elements. He is also the Purusha, the supreme spirit. Purusha means normally a person. So when we think of a person from our present experience, then that means that person has a beginning. This means that he has taken birth and there is some history, and then he is going to die also. But the Lord is mentioned here as Anadi, that means beginningless. So if we examine all the persons, we'll find that everybody has got a beginning and everybody has got an end also. But here the Lord is the supreme person because he does not change his body like the way we change our body. So he has no beginning and he has no end also. In fact, Brahma himself prays to the Lord in 7th canto. He says, "My Lord, you are unlimited and you possess unending potencies. No one can estimate or calculate your prowess or wonderful influence, for your actions are never polluted by the material energy." That means we are all polluted by the material energy, but the Lord is not polluted by material energy. Through the material qualities, you can very easily create the universe, maintain it, and again annihilate it. Yet you remain the same without deterioration. Therefore, I offer my respect to obeisance unto you. That means the Lord creates, maintains, and also annihilates through the material energy. So though the Lord creates through his energies, the Lord is not affected. His position remains the same. Does not have deterioration like what we have. So also Brahma says in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadiradir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karma. He's a Purusha, he's a person. The Lord is not impersonal, but he's a person. But he's Supreme Spirit. Now, when we say spirit, we see consciousness is the proof of spirit in our body. Now, we have consciousness in every part of our body. That is because the presence of the spirit soul within our body. Similarly, super consciousness is the proof of the super spirit. Just as the super soul is within our body, similarly, the super soul exists within the universe also. So just as the soul is the cause of this body, similarly, super soul is the cause of this universe. Consciousness does not come from matter, but comes from spirit. Now, if you try to understand, when we see a pearl necklace or pearl this thing, we see they're all bound by a thread. So there is something that is pushing all this. So when there is a creation, there is also maintenance, and there is a creator behind it. So when a child sees light coming from a bulb, it means that the light is coming from the bulb. It is right. But there is also an electricity, and also there is a man operating the electricity. So, but electricity does not come automatically on its own. There is somebody operating it. So also, persons with a very poor fund of knowledge, they think that nature is giving everything. But a person, another example given is about the potter. A potter makes clay pot. The earth is giving clay, but the potter is making it. But without the clay or the potter, no pots are possible. Similarly, nature is giving something, but nature also has a cause, and that is Krishna. So Krishna is the cause of all causes. So Prakriti means nature, but it is control. He has a master, and that is a Purusha, and he is Krishna himself. Then it is mentioned here, the Supreme Godhead is the Supreme Soul. Now, he's the super soul. Like we have a soul inside. The Lord is the super soul also, because of which his presence can be perceived everywhere. Now, what is the definition of spirit? Spirit is something by which it is perceived, the presence of spirit is perceived everywhere. For example, Brahman means great. His greatness is perceived, the Lord's greatness is perceived everywhere. And what is that greatness? That is consciousness. So consciousness is great, and through the consciousness, one can perceive the presence of the Lord everywhere. Now, our consciousness is felt through our body. Every part of our body, we feel the consciousness. An example is given about even in a hair. If something, if somebody tries to pick a hair from one's body, he feels the pain. That is because there is consciousness within that body, within the hair also. That is individual consciousness. Similarly, there is super consciousness. Now, the consciousness makes this body active. Similarly, the universe has got a super consciousness. The Lord is present in the form of super soul within the universe. See, if we try to hold a small object, even if it is the lightest object, we cannot hold it. It falls down by the force of gravity. But when a small object can fall down, the huge object like a universe keeps floating. And it's not one universe. There are so many universes which are floating. And within each universe, there are so many planetary systems, there are so many stars, so many things that are floating. How? Because the Lord as the super soul is present in each of them. And because of that, they are made very light. For example, we see when an aircraft flies, the aircraft flies on principles of lightness. If it is heavy, then it cannot fly, but it is made light. Similarly, the universe is made light by the presence of the super soul within the universe. Therefore, we see Narad Muni telling Maharaj Yudhishthira in one of the cases, sloka, he says, O King Yudhishthira, the super soul in every body gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the super soul is the chief within the body. The super soul is manifested to the individual according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. So, super soul is present within our body, and that super soul is manifested to the individual according to the individual's comparative development of three things, that is knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. So if we have knowledge and if we perform austerity, penance, then that super soul is revealed to us through that knowledge. Similarly, the Lord's as the super soul of the universe can be understood this way. He is pure in goodness. He illuminates the entire universe and bestows all benedictions upon his devotees. Now, the Lord has created this entire universe from his spiritual potency. So, according to his desire, the Lord entered this universe as the super soul, and by virtue of his potencies, is maintaining all the living entities desiring material enjoyment. That means the Lord has created this material universe through his energies. He is present as the super soul, and as also the super soul, he is also through his energies maintaining all the living entities desiring material enjoyment. So whether it's a plant or whether it's an animal or whether it's a human being, the Lord is present as the super soul in the heart of every material body. See, in one of the purport, as you mentioned that the predominating deity of the sun is also another expansion of Narayana, who is illuminating the entire universe. That means the Lord is illuminating the entire universe and is present as an expansion of Narayana. So the Lord enters the hearts of all the living entities as a super soul, and he gives them the intelligence and fulfills their material desires also. And this is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by the sloka 15:15, Sarvasichaham Iti Sannivishta Mattasmiti Jnanam Apohanam Cha. He says, I am sitting in everyone's heart, and from me comes knowledge, intelligence, and forgetfulness. Brahma also prays in Brahma Samhita. He says, Andandarasta Paramana Chayantarasta. The Lord, he says that he enters the universe and the atom as well. So the Lord is present not only in the huge universe, but also in the present in the smallest object that possible, that is an atom. In the Rig Veda also, the deity is mentioned that the predominating deity of the sun is worshipped by the mantra Deya Sada Savitri Mandala Madhyavata Narayana Sarsya Sannivishta. That means the Lord is worshipped as Lord expansion of Narayana as a predominating deity of the sun. So Lord Narayana sits on his lotus flower within the sun, and by reciting this mantra, every living entity should actually take shelter of Narayana, just as sun rises. Normally, we recite many times mantras, but people don't know the meaning of the mantra. But the meaning of this mantra, Narayana Sarsya Sannivishta, is that by reciting this mantra, one actually takes shelter of Lord Narayana as the sun rises. So Prabhupada gives an example about how, according to the modern scientist himself, the material world rests on the sun's effulgence. Now, due to the sunshine, all the planets are rotating. Due to the sunshine, the vegetables are growing. So there is information also that the moonshine helps vegetables and herbs grow. So actually, Narayana is within the sun, is maintaining the entire universe. Therefore, Narayana should be worshipped by this Gayatri mantra or the Rig Veda mantra. Another example given is about small sunlight and the light in the room. Sunlight can be perceived everywhere. The moment we go out, we see the sunlight. And many times they perceive see the sunlight even within the room or the sky. So the small light is experienced within a limited area. But similarly, our consciousness is perceived within the limit of our particular body. But the super consciousness or the existence of Supreme God is perceived everywhere, is present everywhere by His energy. So just as we can feel the consciousness within our body, similarly the super consciousness can be perceived throughout the universe by the energy of the Lord. It is also mentioned in the Vishnu Purana that whatever we find at anywhere and everywhere is a distribution of the energy of the Lord. That means the Lord does not directly create, He does not directly maintain or annihilate, but He does everything through His energies. He creates through Lord Brahma, He maintains through Vishnu himself, and He annihilates through Lord Shiva. Similarly, everything is done in this material world by through His energy, spiritual as well as material. In Bhagavad Gita also the Lord says that He is all pervading and exists everywhere by His two kinds of energies, that is spiritual and material. So spiritual and material energies are spread everywhere within the material world, and that is the proof of existence of the personality of Godhead. Similarly, as regards being a super soul of the universe, there's a quote in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which says that the Supreme Lord is a super soul of all the demigods entrusted with the task of constructing the cosmic manifestation. So being thus prayed to by the demigods, the Lord thought to himself and manifested as the gigantic form for their understanding. This is regarding the universal form of the Lord, which is a material form. So for the beginning of worship, materialists can't understand the spiritual form of the Lord. So the Lord even enters into that universal form, and as super soul, He entered into all the demigods and created this cosmic manifestation through them. There is also a quote in the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It says that this manifestation of subtle and gross matter exists within the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Out of His costless mercy towards His devotees, He exhibits various forms which are all transcendental. That means that everything that is created of matter, they all exist within the Supreme Personality of Godhead, originate from Him, maintained by Him through His energies and annihilated. But still, the Lord comes in various forms which are all transcendental in nature. And in that same sloka, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions about a quote by Srila Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami says that this Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. It is by His will that the gross and subtle ingredients interact. That means by the Lord's will, all these separated gross and subtle ingredients, they interact and appear in various forms. And the Lord appears in various incarnations just to please the hearts of pure devotees. For example, the Lord appeared in the transcendental incarnation of Lord Varaha or Bor, just to please His devotees to lift the planet Earth from the Garbhodaka ocean. So the existence of consciousness is there everywhere. It is not temporary. Consciousness has no beginning, and consciousness now has no end. Just like the soul has no beginning and the soul has no end, the Supreme Consciousness also has no beginning. And the theory also, Srila Jiva Goswami mentions that the theory that consciousness develops at a certain stage of material combination is not accepted. There are many mental speculators who say that consciousness develops when certain matters combine. So just by combination of various material elements in a body, the consciousness does not develop. The body becomes active by the presence of this consciousness, that is the soul. So atheistic people believe that there is no soul, there is no God, and that consciousness is the result of combination of matter. But that is not true. Just by combination of matter, body does not become active. It becomes active by the presence of consciousness, that is the presence of the spirit soul. Also, there's mentioned that as this body has a beginning, the universal body also. And as our material body has begun on the basis of our soul, the entire gigantic universal body also has begun on the basis of the Supreme Soul. So when the Supreme Soul leaves the body is dead. Similarly, when the Supreme Soul leaves the universal body, the universal is destructed, annihilated. Similarly, the Vedanta Sutra says, Janmandhyasya Yadaha. That means the entire material exhibition, that is its creation, growth, maintenance, and its dissolution, is an imagination from the Supreme Person. In Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord says, I am the beginning, the source of birth of everything. Also, it mentioned that the Lord is not a temporary person like us, nor does he have a beginning. He is without a cause, but he is the cause of all causes. So Paraha means transcendental, beyond the creative energy. The Lord is the creator of this creative energy, but he is not under this energy. He is Prakriti Para. That means he is beyond this energy. And he is not only that, he is not subjected to the threefold material miseries like what we go through. That is Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Devika. That means disturbances created by body and mind, by other living entities, and also by the higher living entities like the demigods. So the modes of material does not touch the Lord at all. The next point is that the Lord acts through his energies. The Lord does not do anything directly of his own. He does everything through his various energies. So in this reference, there is a quote in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam which says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable supreme energy time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energy become manifest. So the Lord, through his energy as time, causes the interaction of the three modes of material nature, and thus varieties of energies become manifest. It appears like that he is acting, but he is not the actor. He is killing, but he is not the killer. Thus it is understood that only by his inconceivable power, everything is happening. So that means by the Lord's inconceivable power through his various energies, everything is happening. Also, there's mentioned the Lord is inconceivable. That means it is not within the power of one small, tiny brain to comprehend unless one accepts the inconceivable power and energy of the Lord. That means Lord is inconceivable. It cannot be understood by his tiny brain. It can be only understood through the process of Bhakti Yoga. And though the Lord creates certainly all these arrangements, makes all these arrangements, still he is aloof from all the actions and reactions of this material world. We are bound by actions and reactions, but the Lord is not bound by these actions and reactions. And the varieties of energies produced by the interaction of material nature produces various species of life and their resultant happiness and distress. So by the interaction of the material modes of nature, so many species of life are formed, and the resultant happiness and distress are also formed. Also, there's a quote in the Vishnu Purana as to how fire is there in one place, but the heat and light produced by the fire act in many different ways. Another example given is about electric powerhouse. The electric powerhouse is situated in one place, but its energies are distributed in so many different places. So the production is never identical with the original source of energy, but the original source of energy, being the prime factor, is simultaneously one with and different from the Lord. That means Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually gave this philosophy of Achinta Bheda Veda Tattva. is a perfect way of understanding. That means everything is one from the Lord, but at the same time different. When we say one with the Lord, means everything originates from the Lord. So you can say at the same time they are one with the Lord, but again they are different, means they are different from the Lord. They are not the same as the Lord. The Lord acts through his energies, but the Lord does not get affected. So in the material world, it is mentioned that the Lord incarnates in three forms as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, by which he takes charge of these three modes of material nature. The Lord does not directly relate with these modes of nature, but he acts through Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So by his incarnation as Brahma, he creates, as his incarnation of Vishnu, he maintains, and by his incarnation of Shiva, he also annihilates. But the original source of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is Garbhodakasaya Vishnu. And he is always apart from these actions and reactions of this material nature. Also, they mentioned that the Lord has innumerable amount of energies, and the Lord manifests his activities in the material world through one of these energies. By his energy, he sustains all the planetary system, but still, out of his pleasure potency, he remains in his personal abode called Goloka. The Lord remains eternally in Goloka planet, in his Goloka planet, but still, through his energy, he is present in all over the universe. So by expansion of his opulence, he is present in Vaikuntha planets as Narayana. And by his material energy, he creates innumerable universes within innumerable planets within them. So thus it is difficult for anyone to estimate the wonderful activities of the Lord. Therefore, the Lord is known as Urukrama, the wonderful actor. And one of the meanings of this word krama is the wonderful display of the energies of the Lord. Also, I mentioned that the Lord is not contaminated by the three modes of material nature. So, in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Narad Muni tells to Dhruva Maharaj that the personality of Godhead is uncontaminated by the modes of nature. He is the remote cause of creation of this material cosmic manifestation. When he gives the impetus, many other causes and effects are produced, and thus the whole universe moves. Just as iron moves by the integrated force of a magnet. See, many times if we see, when we bring a magnet, small iron pieces move. Similarly, by just the giving of the impetus of the Lord, so many causes and effects are produced, and the whole universe moves. In fact, the Lord, just by his glance, he creates. We can't create by our glance. We have to break our head through our head so many times in so many ways, maybe to create a small thing, but the Lord creates just by his glance. So there's mention on the purport that the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead works within this material world. Everything is happening by the energy of the Lord. A simple example is about the interaction of the elements. One example is given: when we mix soda and acid, the moment of effervescence is produced. But one cannot produce life by such interaction of chemicals. So soda is made by the combination of so many ingredients, but one cannot come to a conclusion that by interaction of chemicals, a body can be given form. There are 84 lakhs pieces of life with different wishes and different actions. So many living entities are there having so many desires and so many actions, perform so many actions. How this material fold is working cannot be explained by the basis of any chemical reaction. So behind all the actions and reactions, that is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna says that everything depends on his energy, yet he is not everywhere. Now the pot is produced under certain conditions of action and reaction of this material energy, but the potter is not the pot. Similarly, the material creation is set up by the Lord, but he remains aloof. He simply glanced over it and matter began agitation. Also, there is mentioned in this Bhagavad Gita how the Lord impregnates the material energy with part and parcel jivas, and thus different forms and different activities immediately ensue. So the Lord, when he manifests this creation, he impregnates various jivas in various forms and makes them perform various activities. Because of their different desires and karmic activities of the jiva, different types of bodies in different species are produced. So we have jivas like us have desires, and we have some activities. Based on these two, different forms of bodies are given. So the point is that various varieties of phenomena occur within the universe on account of the actions and reactions of the three modes of material nature. But the original creator or the cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the remote cause. He just pushes the wheel of his energy. But nevertheless, he remains transcendent to the actions and reactions of the material gunas. The next is Dhamma. In Brahma Samhita, Brahma says, Ananda Chinmaya Rasapati Bhavitavi Stabirya Eva Nija Rupataya Kalavi Goloka Eva Nivasatyapi Latma Bhuto Govinda Madhibhushan Tamaham Bhajami. He says, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure. That means the Lord is residing in Goloka with Srimati Radharani in his spiritual abode called Goloka, in his spiritual figure, also the embodiment of ecstatic potency possessed by 64 artistic qualities. The Lord has got 64 artistic qualities, which I mentioned the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And in the company of a confidence, embodiments of the extents of a bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. The Lord is always ever blissful in his spiritual rasa, in the performance of pastimes with his devotees. The next point that is mentioned here is Swayam Jyoti, self-effulgence. Now, the Brahman effulgence or the effulgence of Brahman Jyoti is the Lord's own bodily effulgence. And it is said that everything that is there, they come from this Brahma Jyoti. In fact, in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a quote which says that, my dear Lord, in your impersonal manifestation of Brahman, there are always two opposing elements, knowledge and ignorance. Your multiple energies are continuously manifest, but the impersonal Brahman, which is undivided, original, changeless, unlimited, and blissful, is the cause of this material manifestation. So that means actually this Brahman effulgence is the glaring effulgence emanating from the body of the Lord, and it is because of this Brahman effulgence, which is undivided, it is original, it is changeless, it is unlimited and blissful, is the cause of the material manifestation. That means the entire material manifestation is emanated from this Brahma Jyoti or the Brahman effulgence of the body. It is like it is covering the body of the Lord. Now, in this verse, it is mentioned that Swayam Jyoti, that means he is light himself. So, Srila Prabhupada gives an example how in the material world, one's light is like a reflection of another. Just like moonlight is a reflection of the sunlight, sunlight is also a reflection of the Brahma Jyoti. This Brahma Jyoti is nothing but a spiritual effulgence. It's a reflection of the body of the Supreme Lord. And this Brahma Jyoti is due to his bodily luster. Therefore, it is mentioned Swayam Jyoti. He himself is light. Normally, people perceive that the Lord is light. The Lord is present in that light in the form of this Brahma Jyoti. But the Lord has also a form. But many say that the Lord is impersonal. That means they consider this Brahma Jyoti as impersonal. But there is a personal form of the Lord which is beyond this Brahma Jyoti. So he himself is light, and his light is distributed in different ways as the Brahma Jyoti, as the sunlight, and as also the moonlight. Bhagavad Gita also says that there is no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity in the spiritual world. that the Lord says that there's no need of any illumination, artificial illumination, spiritual world, because the Lord is self-illuminating. And this Lord's all concept of all pervasiveness, the Lord is all pervading, is present everywhere. And here it is mentioned that the Lord's all pervasiveness is due to his illumination everywhere in the form of Brahma Jyoti. Example is given that the sun is situated in one place, but the sunlight is diffused all around for millions and millions of miles. Similarly, although the supreme light is situated in his personal abode, Vaikuntha or Vrindavana, his light is diffused not only in the spiritual world, but beyond that. In the material world also, that light is reflected by the sun globe, and the sunlight is reflected by the moonlight. So though the Lord is situated in his Vaikuntha planets, still his light in the form of Brahma Jyoti is spread everywhere. And that light is reflected by the sun globe, and the sunlight is reflected by the moon globe. So the Lord, though situated in his abode, his light is distributed all over the spiritual and material worlds. The Lord is the super soul of everything. And he has got innumerable transcendental qualities. He is not a Purusha of this material world, but he is a person beyond this material existence. So in Brahma Samhita, there is a quote where Lord Brahma says, Yasya Prabha Prabhato Bhavato Jagadanda Kodi Kodi Ashesha Vasudha Vibhuti Bhinnam Tat Brahma Nishkalam Ashesha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamam Bhajami. The translation is, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman. That means the Lord's effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman mentioned in the Upanishads. Being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe appears as the indivisible, infinite, limitless truth. We'll go to the purport. Some important points I mentioned that this mundane universe is one of the infinite manifestations of having space, time, etc. That means the universe which we are in is one of the infinite manifestations of the Lord. The impersonal aspect of the Godhead, the non-differentiated Brahman, is far above this principle of mundane creation. That Brahman is only the boundary of the transcendental realm of the Vaikuntha. That means the boundary of the transcendental world, Vaikuntha planets, is what is this Brahma Jyoti. Brahma Jyoti covers the Vaikuntha planets. It's a covering. Brahma also establishes through this verse that the source of Brahma Jyoti is Krishna. So Brahma Jyoti is the external effulgence emanating from the body of the Lord. It is the outer wall of the spiritual world, and it is invisible. Just as the Lord is transcendental, the spiritual effulgence is also transcendental, but it is spread everywhere in all the directions. According to one's realization, one can understand the absolute truth as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That means those who are beginners in the spiritual realization, they worship the Brahman form of the Lord. For example, the Kumaras, Viluvangala Thakula, Sukadev Goswami, all were Brahman realized, but later they became worshippers of the personality of Godhead. So Sri Jiva Goswami in his Bhagavad Sandarbha states that realization of this impersonal Brahman means realization of Krishna minus his form and his personality. These are the most important aspects of realization of God. That is, if one has got a Brahman realization, his realization is Krishna minus his form and personality. So because the Lord is almighty and possesses all the transcendental potencies, the complete conception of the absolute truth is realized in Bhagavan form, feature of the personality of Godhead. But realization of Brahman and realization of personality of Godhead example is given like entering a kingdom. One might enter a kingdom of a king, but entering the king's palace and living with the king are different. So these are different stages of realization of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahman is like entering the kingdom, then entering the king's palace is like Paramatma realization, and living with the king, with relationship and pleasure is realizing the absolute truth as Bhagavan. And then there is a mention in the same purport that unless one surpasses the glare of the Brahma Jyoti, one cannot receive information on the land of the Lord. The impersonalists can neither realize the form of the Lord or the land of the Lord. Therefore, Ishopanishad petitions that the Lord remove the effulgent rays of Brahma Jyoti so that pure devotees can see all blissful transcendental form. So devotees of the Lord, they are all praying, saying that the Lord remove this Brahman effulgence so that they can see the pure transcendental form of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada gives one more example of the sun globe and sunshine. To remain in the sunshine does not mean that one has gone to the sun globe. One may have traveled through the sunshine in jet planes, but has not reached the sun globe. The temperature of the sun globe is different from that of the sunshine. So although the sunshine and sun globe are one and the same, still one is energy and the other one is the energetic source. Sunshine comes from sun, but still they are one at the same time different. They are simultaneously one and different. One important point that is mentioned here is about how it is like a plane. One may fly in a plane in the sky, but it can't land without a shelter. So it is mentioned that yogis and jnanis, they keep flying without a shelter and finally they land back in this material world and again start the process of realization. That means those who, the impersonalists who enter the Brahman effulgence, they also need some shelter, which they don't get, and therefore they come back to this material world. Generally, pure devotees of the Lord don't worship this Brahman effulgence. They worship the Bhagavan feature of the Lord. Some more points. Krishna is the cause of this Brahma Jyoti also. Everything is sustained by the Brahma Jyoti. The Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya tatam idam sarvam. That means by me in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I'm not in them. So by the Lord by his Brahma Jyoti manifests this entire universe and everything is pervaded through the Brahma Jyoti. So with this, I conclude the class for the day. So the next 2 minutes, or 2 minutes, I can take some questions, some comments. Anyone has any questions, any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Beautifully explained about Paramatma.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
Almost all the points you have covered, and he is in everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mataji.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So there are no questions, no comments. I take the classes over. Thank you all very much. Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.